Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello Wizards, my name is DJ, this is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. Today's deck tech is Adeliz the Cinder Wind. Adeliz the Cinder Wind is 1 blue-red for a 2/2 legendary human wizard. Adeliz has flying and haste, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, wizards you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Adeliz gives super prowess, every wizard getting pumped up, and if you can chain together a few spells, that's enough to take over a game. The first thing that we're going to do in this deck is embrace wizards. Adeliz pumps all of the wizards, so we're going to make sure that this is a wizard tribal deck. But how heavy do we go in on the wizards? Do we put in so many wizards that we don't have enough spells? Because we need spells to chain together to make Adeliz pump our entire team. So we're going to need a little bit of a balance in this deck, making sure that we pay attention to the spells. And what kind of spells do we want? Do we want little cantrippy spells to make sure to pump our entire team, even though the effect might not be big enough to make an impact on Commander? Or do we go a little bit bigger, go for more exciting spells, but then those might get stuck in our hand and we might only be able to pump all of our wizards +1/+1 or +2/+2? And that leads us to the next question. Is this an aggro deck? Are we going for as many low drops as possible, trying to cantrip all these spells together to pump everything up and take someone out of the game? Or are we leaning more heavily on the control aspects of wizards? Wizards have a great flexibility to them, and I want to explore a bunch of them. And that's actually where we're going to start this video off, is all of the wizards that we can include in this deck. And there's tons of them, and they play so many different roles. The first thing that I'm going to look at are the aggressive wizards, and these ones are particularly aggressive. We Dragonauts, Stormchaser Mage, and Tempest Caller. I think that these belong in any build of the deck because We Dragonauts gets huge on its own, and then even more impressive when Adeliz comes onto the battlefield. Just a couple spells and suddenly We Dragonauts hits for 7 or 9 or 10, it's crazy. Same thing goes with Stormchaser Mage. It's an aggressive little wizard, it's got prowess and haste. I like the ability of Adeliz having haste and these other creatures having haste to kind of have damage come out of nowhere in the late game. And then finally, Tempest Caller is a great political card because it says, tap all creatures target opponent controls. So you can tap down one player and then suddenly your wizards come in unimpeded. It also opens up the rest of the table to attack that opponent as well. I like that a lot. Those wizards are all about attacking, and if we want to explore different ways that this deck can go, we're going to want to explore more interactive wizards. Vendilion Clique is one of the best interactive wizards because it can mess with your opponent's hand. Heck, it can even help you change out a bad card for maybe any old card off the top of your deck. And a 3/1 flyer is still a really powerful rate. We also might want to mess with our opponents with Magus of the Moon. This deck does skew blue, which means that a lot of the basics we have are going to be islands, and so when Magus of the Moon comes down, it will turn all of our dual lands into mountains, but then all of our basics will essentially be islands, and so it won't hurt us very much, but it could provide a huge interruption to our opponents. And then Dacra Mystic is an early drop. A lot of times if we're going aggressive, we might need 1-drops in this deck, but it's also kind of a fun 1-drop because it plays really well in the late game, allowing you to manipulate your opponent's draws. The most important part is that with Adeliz, all of these become great attackers. Usually you're not swinging in with your Magus of the Moon or your Dacra Mystic, but maybe if you've landed a Tempest Caller or Adeliz and pumped them up +3/+3, +5/+5, then suddenly, yeah, they attack pretty well. And there's other creatures like Nimble Obstructionist. Again, that 3/1 flying flash body is really powerful for getting damage in, but also it can provide the flexibility to counter target activated or triggered ability. That has me thinking of another tricky card, Void Mage Husher. Counters target activated ability and lets you bounce it back and forth to your hand. And then Portal Mage is another sneaky flash wizard. If you flash it in when your opponent's attacking with a particularly nasty creature, you can send it a different direction, which is really fun in my opinion. Now, let's talk about a few things that are not wizards but might be good enough to enter into this deck. Gutter Snipe is a goblin shaman, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. That might be enough damage to make it worth it in our deck. And Talrand Sky Summoner is a wizard, but it puts drakes onto the battlefield. And so as it's going wide, it's not necessarily building up that wizard count for our Adeles to take advantage of. But then again, just like Gutter Snipe, it might be good enough to give that extra points of damage through. And then finally, Docent of Perfection is not a wizard itself, but this is kind of the best of both worlds because it does put human wizards onto the battlefield. And when it flips over, man, it gets crazy because it'll pump your wizards +2/+1, give them flying, and it will still pump out more and more wizards. And so this is an interesting dynamic because we know that there are a lot of great Izzet cards that can play well in this deck. We see everywhere a lot of cards that do synergize well with the ability to play with a lot of spells, but they might not synergize with the wizard aspect of this deck. And so it creates an interesting tension. Do you want to put that Erratic Cyclops or that Crackling Drake in this deck? And if you reach enough of those types of cards, then should you actually sub out Adeles and put in a different Izzet commander? I actually really like these decision points about what we need to put in and how much we need to stick to the wizard strategy. I love how well wizards synergize with the spell's matter theme in this deck. Naramiha Master Wizard can copy a target instant or sorcery spell you control, and it gives other wizards +1/+1. Snapcaster Mage lets you flash back a spell in your graveyard, and Archaeomancer lets you get one of those instants or sorceries straight back to your hand. We've been talking a lot about enter the battlefield effects, and so Naban Dean of Iteration can be particularly powerful. This deck is full of wizards, and it says if a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. And then also Spellseeker combines really nicely with the spell's matter theme. It's a creature that lets you search for an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less and put it into your hand. That means it's getting counter spells, cantrips, Cyclonic Rift, all sorts of great stuff. Wizards can be highly disruptive. Silumgar's Sorcerer can counter a creature spell if you end up exploiting it, or just be a little annoying flash-flying dude. Venser also supplies some great interaction, allowing you to bounce a permanent or a spell. And Glenelendra Archmage is a double negate on a wizard, incredibly powerful. We're going to have a lot of cheap spells that let us churn through our deck, but wizards can also help in that area. Champion of Wits lets us loot, and if we eternalize it, well, it nets us some cards, so I like that. Baral, Chief of Compliance, makes our instant and sorcery spells cost cheaper. I really like that, especially because we're going to have a high concentration of them. And every so often, Baral will help us loot. And Jace Vryn's Prodigy doesn't attack very well, but the looting on it is incredibly powerful, and when flipped over, it gives us flashback, letting us rebuy some of our more powerful spells. But these are all mostly looting effects. Let's just draw cards. Jorian Ruin Diver lets us draw a card when we cast our second spell. We'll often be chaining several spells together. And Azami Lady of Scrolls can come down and just keep drawing. Just never stop drawing cards. Azami doesn't attack very well, but when you can draw that many cards, yeah, we're gonna make her like a 10-10, 10-12, attacking our opponents, chaining everything together with Adeles. So strong. Azami's kind of a game winner when you combine her with a lot of different wizards, and there are a few other cards that do that too. Galecaster Colossus is a 7 CMC wizard, but you can tap an untapped wizard you control to return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. This can essentially let you Cyclonic Rift every single turn if you have a nice concentration of wizards. It's backbreaking. And Lighthouse Chronologist is just a little dude coming down early as a 2-drop. I mean, come on. But then if we can invest some extra mana in it, it becomes dangerous when you level it up 7 times. At the beginning of each end step, if it's not your turn, take an extra turn after this one. In Commander, that means that you will have every other turn. So for each turn of the table of a 4-player game, yeah, you will take your own turn, then your opponent will go, then you'll take a turn, then your second opponent will go, then you'll take a turn, then your third opponent will go, then you'll take a turn. Oh, and then you'll just take your own turn. Did so many turns. This is just a lightning rod, and if it stays on the battlefield, you just win. You just win all the time. So we've talked a lot about wizards. We've even talked a lot about the wizards that help support our spell strategy. Baral making our instants and sorceries cheaper. Spellseeker seeking out those low CMC spells. Guttersnipe, Talrand, and Docent of Perfection giving us damage advantage. And those wizards that directly interact with spells like Narumeha, Archaeomancer, and Snapcaster. And Adeliz herself, allowing huge anthems when we cast lots of spells. Honestly, these can be whatever spells you want. Popular ones will be like Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm, these cantrippy spells that you can chain together and can set up your draws and move the wizards you really need to the top, push the ones you don't to the bottom. They're going to be incredibly powerful. But I really get excited by the spells that make this more of an aggressive deck. Price of Progress, again, punishing your opponents for having those non-basic lands, doing tons of damage across the board. Dynacharge, being an additional huge power buff to all of your wizards. And then Insult to Injury, Insult doubling the damage, making Adeliz not just powerful, but game-ending. These are kind of the fun red cards that I like to include in this type of deck. And ultimately, I love the flexibility. You might hate these cards, but you include your own sets of spells, because the wizards will synergize with any spells. One thing that I've enjoyed doing is having copy effects, Fury Storm, Bonus Round, the Mirari Conjecture. All of these will copy and rebuy and have interesting interactions with the spells you do enjoy. One thing to take note is that copies of spells are not cast. So the copies won't trigger a lot of your effects like Adeliz or the Guttersnipe. So that's just something to keep in mind. It doesn't mean that the copies aren't good, it just means that they're not broken. Other effects I enjoy is Primal Wellspring. It's a value artifact that flips into a very powerful land, and Expansion Explosion. I've often found Expansion copying a ramp spell of an opponent or even a cantrip of your own being very good, and then Explosion being this great late game mana sink that can end games. If you don't like copying, you can focus on rebuying. Faithless Looting and Artful Dodge give us 2 spells for a single card because of that wonderful flashback ability. I also really like Remand because it can interact with your opponent, giving you a tempo advantage, but you can always remand your own spell, letting you draw a card and then play your original spell over again, giving you multiple ways to chain spells together and pump your entire team. And of course, there's the ability to rebuy a lot of cards, Mission Briefing and Mystic Retrieval. Mission Briefing, really close to Snapcaster Mage. It's great to have 2 of them in this deck. And the ability to rebuy other cards, especially those instants and sorceries that make up a critical piece of this deck, is going to be really strong. By the way, Mystic Retrieval, it rebuys and it has flashback. That's kind of exactly what you want. And so you can take these kinds of themes, and if you like playing Lightning Bolt, throw Lightning Bolt in there. If you like Fireball and doubling it up, then that's great too. Find out what spells you do like, but don't go overboard. Make sure that your spells have the support they need. Make sure your deck has the right wizard count. It may require a little bit of testing, but that's like the fun part. That's the part I really enjoy. Alright, let's talk about winning this game. One of the best ways to win this game is with your Adeliz, just pumping everything up and taking over the game. But some people might want to play a little bit more of a flexible win condition. I really like Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. The reason why is because Isochron Scepter goes so well with all the other awesome cards in this deck. You can put a cantrip on this, you can put a remand on it, you can put all sorts of stuff under Isochron Scepter, cast it every turn, and always be pumping with Adeliz. But if you happen to put a Dramatic Reversal underneath there, have a couple mana rocks, then suddenly all your things are gigantics, infinite infinites, you have all of the mana, and then suddenly you've won the game out of nowhere. And sometimes a tempo wizard deck does need a little bit of inevitability, of the being able to win out of nowhere. And then one other combo that I like a lot is the Dualcaster Mage combo. It combos with cards like Twin Flame and Heat Shimmer to make infinite Dualcaster Mages with haste that you can attack with for the win. And the reason why I like this combo in this deck is that Dualcaster Mage is a wizard and it copies, so it seems to fit the general theme of this deck anyways. I want to take a minute to go over the combo because it can be a little bit confusing. Alright, right now we have the stack on the right, we have the battlefield on the left, and in our hand we have a Heat Shimmer. We want to cast Heat Shimmer, but in order to cast it, we actually need a target. Let's target Spellseeker, not because it needs to be a wizard or anything, but because I really like the art on this card, and so I want it to be on the screen. Alright, now that we actually have a target for Heat Shimmer, we can cast it, and whenever we cast a spell, it ends up over on the stack, and that allows our opponents to interact with this card, counter it, do stuff in response, but also we can do stuff in response. And what I want to do in response is cast a Dualcaster Mage. So I cast a Dualcaster Mage, and as I cast it, it does go over to the stack. Hopefully no one counters it, and we let the Dualcaster Mage resolve. Notice the Heat Shimmer targeting the Spellseeker is still on the stack. Dualcaster Mage enters the battlefield, and it says, I have a trigger that I need to put onto the stack. That trigger basically has you copying an instant or sorcery. Oh, look at that. We have a trigger on the stack, and we have a Heat Shimmer that it can target. Suddenly, we have 2 copies of Heat Shimmer. When Heat Shimmer copy goes onto the stack, we need to, again, target something, just like we first needed to target that Spellseeker. Let's copy the Dualcaster Mage that's already on the battlefield. Now, lo and behold, we have a copy of Dualcaster Mage, and suddenly we've demonstrated a loop, because that Dualcaster Mage needs to put its trigger on the stack, oh my gosh, it needs to copy something, oh look at that original Heat Shimmer, still there, and over and over and over again, until we have infinite Dualcaster Mages, and then our opponent casts Rakdos Charm and we die. No, just kidding. Instead, we overrun people with 2/2s. I just realized I should have used the Twin Flame to do this combo instead of the Heat Shimmer, because the Spellseeker could have gotten the Twin Flame into your hand. Ah, blast. But that's okay. It just shows how many different levels of interaction that this deck can have. And it really does, because wizards are so flexible and they do so many different things. The way that I've felt this deck playing is that I have a lot of wizards that do interesting and unique things, and then with Adeliz, they just happen to become really powerful and potent aggressive threats. And I like that. I like playing a controlling game and then suddenly, boom, your wizards are scary. I think that that's a fun way to play the game, but of course, you can play this however you like to play it, and that's the magic of Adeliz. You can go even more aggressive, play a card like Aven Windmage that double pumps, and other wizards that are very aggressive like Grim Lavamancer, dealing 2 damage to get that last little bit of damage through. You could even go a little bit more spells matter, go big spells. Try an Izzet Chemister and go even bigger and try to use those spells over and over again from our graveyard. Try to overload a Mizzix's Mastery for the win. Or even go with bigger wizards. Big creatures like Niv-Mizzet Perrin or all the Niv-Mizzets are wizards themselves. And so you can find to have a top end of wizard dragons to make this deck really work. And you could even go in with a Dragonstorm combo to get them onto the battlefield. There's so many different ways to customize this deck, which makes me super, super happy. If you want to see how I built this deck, go ahead and click on the deck list in the description. That'll take you over to tcgplayer.com because they sponsor the entire Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and they're a great place to find the cheapest cards on the internet. I also want to thank my patrons because they're so supportive and they are working with me to find out new cool perks, because really we're one big community. So thank you, patrons, for being a part of this YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this video and for supporting me with giving me thumbs up, comments, tweets, all sorts of great stuff. All right, everyone, I'll have more deck techs coming out really soon. Bye.